Hello, everybody, and I am, about a day late. Actually, well, more than a day. Because normally, this recap is filmed, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, that sort of area. And now I'm doing it late Monday night. So, about a day and a half late. But I hope it's still well received. So I'm here to review what was UFC Shanghai became UFC Vegas 83 at the Apex Center. Yadong Song versus Chris Gutierrez main eventing. An odd card. I said it in my preview. I thought that this was a card that had a very bizarre main event because you had Gutierrez coming from the second fight on the card last time out to the main event, which is a bit weird. But it was also a late notice replacement main event, obviously. What I'm saying is, had this fight happened in Shanghai and had Peter Yan on it, it probably would have felt like a bigger deal. I guess that's in a nutshell what I'm saying. But alas, it did not. So here we are, handling this now. The fights were not great. There were moments that were really, really solid. I very much enjoyed Roundtree versus Smith. I enjoyed Tim Elliott versus Sumudarji. I appreciated the dominant display by Kevin Jousset, who I picked against. I enjoyed the craziness that was the second round, anyways, of Steve Garcia and Mel Costa. And Tatsuro Taira had a pretty good showing, and then everything else was kind of not good, not amazing, not lovely, not great. So not fantastic, but some good action, some things to definitely check out and rewatch if you've not seen the fights, if you're going to enjoy watching it again. And also we had one of my favorite announcer booth combinations, John Gooden, Laura Sanko, and Paul Felder. Because I think that's probably the best. I like John Gooden. Paul Felder is by far my favorite veteran analyst, and Laura Sanko. I think is a little bit overhyped. And what I mean by that is that when I listen to Laura Sanko, there's a lot of promise there. But there's a couple of things that need to fall into place a little bit of comfortable, a little bit of poise, veteranness that will come with time, and I have no doubt about it. But I think people are a couple of steps ahead on that matter. So let's handle the dumbness, the stupid social media segment that I've kind of officially tagged onto this now. So dumb point number one. So listen. I am not an Ian Gary fan. I find him cringy. I find his trash talk annoying. And I do think that people who are feeling sorry for him, because people are coming after his family and their trash talk, frankly are wrong. In a nutshell. I'm not saying I agree with everything coming for the family, but okay, if you're going to I use the analogy of someone sticks their hand in a hornet's nest thinking it's a bee's nest. You don't feel bad when they get stung with hornets. They were opening up to getting stung, period, full count. And the way that Ian Gary handled his trash talk was always going to lead to this when you're rightfully or wrongfully married to an older woman. You're in a professional relationship with her ex-husband. He lives with you. You've taken her name, which is not something that is generally done, like it or not. And she has some book writing credits to her name that are just easy, low-hanging fruit. And this was kind of always going to come. And on top of that, but that being said, I am going to defend Ian Gary here for a moment. Neil Magny and the whole custody battle thing, that's your fault. It's kind of weird that people are like, man, Ian Gary is ruining Neil Magny's chance to be a father to his kids by publicizing that he may or may not beat his kids. You know who publicized Neil Magny may or may not beat his kids? Neil Magny. In front of a camera. On the record. At a UFC press event. There you go. And the other thing is, like, coming into UFC 296, Colby Covington fans are just like the weirdest creatures on the planet. Don't get me wrong. If you believe Colby Covington is going to win the UFC welterweight title, that's fine. There are questions I think he asks. I'm still picking Leon Edwards right now, so spoiler there. But, like, come Thursday when I film my my preview, I might change my mind. But it's just kind of weird that they're like using like the fights he lost to Usman is like, yeah, this is why, and like over tiring out a 40-year-old Demi and Maya. That's the reasons why he is totally going to win this fight. Is a little bit weird. Let's get on to the actual fight card here. So starting at the top, working my way down, doing the main event. You want the main event? Here it is. Yadong Song versus Chris Gutierrez was the matchup. And the first round of this fight was fairly fairly interesting and competitive. I scored it for Yadong Song. He had the big moments, but like I understand that he got outlanded 29-17 in the round. People gave it to Gutierrez, not a problem. But I just thought that Song had the big moments, and not one judge gave it to him. And that was the only round I saw any kind of argument for Gutierrez. In the second round, things are going kind of the same, but like Song is a little bit more able to find his way into hurting Gutierrez a little bit more, and then gets the takedown for like 2 minutes, ends up on top control, landing the best ground and pound of the round, the most damaging strikes of the fight. The number of strikes landed is like close, easily around for Yadong Song. And then like the third, fourth, fifth, like it just starts getting sad. Song is like, all right, I can take you down. I can ground and pound you. I can hurt you. You can't really hurt me. The significant strikes are still not like landing in necessarily Song's favor. He's outlanded significant strike wise in round 3. And there's just like not really a lot going on in round 4 and 5. But he broke him down. And like the thing is that Gutierrez, while fouling, like to be clear, the only guy who actually, like, they both got called for eye poking over the course of the fight. And Gutierrez got warned for grabbing gloves, which, is a rare appearance on the foul list. And he's like complaining about like, he's hitting me in the back of the head. And they're like, it's Song is in his guard and like Gutierrez is turning the back of his head to eat the shots. And it's like, well, yeah, of course he's hitting you in the back of the head, but you're in a position where you're in control of your posture and the back of your head is not actually a target for any of these strikes. And he's talking to his corner's telling him to forget it. And like at that point, I lost any faith that Gutierrez would be able to do this. Like that he had certain ideas and stuff that could actually work against Yadong Song, because Yadong Song does not have great pressure and footwork. He does not have the smartest breakdown of things in the cage, so on. There were like, obviously the first round was a great example of like, okay, you can do this. You just have to avoid getting hit like, clean and big. But yeah, as the fight goes on, he's like looking for fouls. He's broken down. He does an Imanari roll in the 5th round, gives up the top control against the wishes of his corner. And to be clear, like, this is not a grappler guy. Like I was actually looking during the 5th round, how many submissions does Chris Gutierrez actually have? And the answer is like 1. He has a rear naked choke victory. So the idea that you would Imanari roll against anyone, never mind a guy who's like been perfectly confident to be on top of you and smack you, is a good idea, is like ridiculous. So it's not that Gutierrez lost, it's that Gutierrez broke. And that was not a good look. Not great for a guy who this was a chance to like really become something of a future not prospect. Wrong word. Future fixture of like action fights on a main card. And I think he failed at that horrendously in this fight. It's not that he doesn't have that ability. It's just he broke when things weren't really going his way. And, and obviously not really applicable to anybody else, because Yadong Song is that kind of plus athlete that you're just not going to run into generally. The fact that he was the only guy getting hurt at any point in this fight, and he really wasn't able to have any sustained damage. Sustained offense, yes, but sustained damage against Song was pretty disappointing. That being said, I picked Yadong Song to win, so, I'm happy about that, I guess. After the fight, Song and Peter Yan, a little bit into it on social media. Yan yawned at the fight on Twitter, which I can't really disagree with. But at the same time, like, you're Peter Yan. Like, maybe focus on getting yourself a W, like, of any kind, before we talk smack. That fight will probably get rebooked. I don't see why not. It makes as much sense now as it did then. And Gutierrez, I've got Montel Jackson. I really wanted Adrian Yanez versus Gutierrez. I did. But then I realized, okay, Yanez is on 2 straight losses, including one to Gutierrez's teammate, Jonathan Martinez. And the UFC really should not do that. Because 3 losses in a row is like never something you want to put anybody with like promise through, realistically. So Yanez will probably get like something very, very stylistically friendly and easy to do in his next fight. And that would not be Gutierrez. So I put Montel Jackson in there as a guy who is huge, has a bunch of potential, but like I'm always unsatisfied with how he fights. Don't get me wrong, fantastic fighter, obvious potential in every fight. Pick a Montel Jackson fight, and there will be like 3, 4, 5 moments of the fight where you're like, but then the rest of the fight will just be kind of like, why are you doing this? So, anyways, him versus Gutierrez, I think would be a good fight. Co-main event with Anthony Smith versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. I was pretty impressed with Smith coming out there and putting the pressure on Roundtree, short-circuiting his kicking game fairly well, having some answers for the right hook counter that Roundtree loves to throw, and avoiding it. But like at the same time, it was very, very obvious that the physicality just was not there. Roundtree, when he hit Smith, would hurt him. He had him stumbled, seeing stars probably multiple times throughout the fight before the finish, and was handling his business. Like each round would have a big moment where Roundtree would just hurt him in a nutshell. It would be one of those cases where like, all right, Anthony, you're kind of winning some of these exchanges, but then bang, you would get hit hard, and then there would be a period of 20, 30, 40 seconds, whatever, where Roundtree would, take over, swing the round back in his favor. The fact that Smith did not actually outland him in any round is a nice proof of that, and was hurt. It was a consummate performance by Roundtree, and then he gets the knockout in the 3rd round. He has like what is now an iconic pose where he's going to come down with the hammer fist, and the referee stops it, and that's nice. It's great. It adds that element of showmanship to it. He seems like he's really putting something together. I was kind of waiting for this for a while. I was hoping it would happen before Roundtree hit 33 years old, that Roundtree would figure out that he's a big hitter and has no real physical limitations that are not like, or fighting limitations that are not of his own making. And he would, kind of get it done. And he did. He did it. I don't really have a lot else to say. He wants Alex Pereira in a title shot after this. That wouldn't make any sense. Like, don't get me wrong. 205 is in a weird spot where, like, there's the fight to make meritocracy-wise would be Pereira and Hill, waiting for Hill to recover from his injury and sorting out his legal issues. But that's way too far down the road, probably, for what Alex wants to do. So that leaves you with a kind of a weird place here. But, like, realistically speaking, like, Roundtree would be like the 4th or 5th guy to look at that. Let me pull up. I wasn't intending to do this, but let me pull up the UFC rankings for a hot second here. And if we look at the 205-pound rankings, I'm not sure if this has been updated since the card. Yeah, I think it is, because it's got Roundtree up a spot. Roundtree is ranked 11th. Not getting a title shot off that. Let's be honest. It should be Jamal Hill, but you could even say Yuri Prohaska in a rematch would make more sense. You could say Magomed Ankalaev, despite coming off a draw, would make more sense. You could say the winner of Ankalaev versus Walker would make more sense. You could see Nikita Krylov would make more sense as a title contender than Khalil Roundtree. So I don't think he's going to get it, even though it'd be a fun fight. Like, that's the beauty of Alex Pereira as a champion, is like almost everything is a fun fight idea that like I could get behind, that I could get hyped for. That's the beauty of it. But I think more likely, I would actually love to see him fight Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz is great at punishing kicks. Roundtree does like to kick to the body and to the legs. He likes to make that part of his game. He styles himself as a Thai fighter. That would seem like a really, really fun fight. And if he gets past that, then yes, he is in title contention. And Smith, I've got against the winner of Alonzo Menefield versus Dustin Jacoby. Just generally, a fight with Justin Jacoby would be fun. Nasrat Haqparast knocked out Jamie Malarkey in the first round. I think this was only slightly over a minute, if I'm not mistaken here. Okay, a little bit more. Minute 44. Minute 44. So it was a little bit longer. It was a little bit awkward with like both men trying to like kind of establish the front foot and just not really being able to do it. And then Haqparast clipped Malarkey badly, put him on the on the wobbly legs. Malarkey fell on his ass, tried to get up, get flurried on, falls back down. Keith Peterson steps in to stop the fight. The only problem for Haqparast was I can do without being the King of Morocco's big spokesman in the UFC. I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan. And it's not an anti like Moroccan. Like I don't enjoy when fighters from Canada even are like big upping like some Canadian politician. It happens. It happens on our regional scene. You'll get a fighter who wins and then has a big spiel about Pierre Polivet or I haven't heard one for Justin Trudeau. I'm sure it's happened, probably in Quebec, but like I don't want it. I don't need it. like it's not a great thing when like your big cheerleaders as a politician are fighters. Like I think it's actually like actively a bad idea. Not that the King of Morocco is necessarily a politician, but he's a political force. Anyways, moving on. I don't think I got a lot of answers to my questions with Haqparast because my problem is still like Haqparast in prolonged exchanges becomes predictable and therefore gets slowly kind of taken apart. And we just kind of short-circuited that by having the fight be 104 seconds. I've got Haqparast versus Joel Alvarez as my next fight. I've got Malarkey versus Daniel Zellhuber. He's a tall guy. My questions about Zellhuber are kind of like how much of his game is just tall man's defense, insulation by reach, etc. Let's see what that happens there. And then we move on to Sumudarji versus Tim Elliott, where Tim Elliott did Tim Elliott things. He came out. He was doing some weird kicks where like he'll pose on one leg and kind of do the punch kick. He even did a cartwheel in there at one point. Sumudarji was looking fine with some nice counter work and so on, but he ended up, still getting some kicks caught, gets a takedown. And arm triangle for Elliott, gets the job done, chokes him out, does the thing, boom, done. It's a shame because like Sumudarji like is a is a fun fighter, but like there's just a lot of not even lack of ability as a grappler, just lack of like positive decision making trees in his game, which leads to him ending up in really, really, really bad spots on the ground. And Elliott capitalized and got the job done. So like the problem is that as much as Sumudarji is only 27 years old or whatever, but like there doesn't seem to be any strides being made to fix this problem. As a result, I've got him matched up against Joshua Van as a guy who's up and coming, and I kind of want to see them like just have kind of a kickboxing match, honestly. And then for Elliott, I've got Steve Urseg, who is kind of in that position to have that next step. Because I'm very, very mixed on what Urseg can do. Andre Muniz versus Jungyoung Park. This fight was some controversy, and I get it. I did score the fight for Muniz. I think you can score all 3 rounds for Muniz, technically, by the criteria. But the first and the third round are questionable. Well, the second round is Muniz winning, doing his thing with, getting the takedown, keeping him down, countering scrambles, and not doing a lot of damaging work, but like just limiting what Jung Young Park could do. And like in the third and the first and the third round, Park managed to get some top position for bits and got some ground and pound. But the problem I saw with this fight, and it's the reason I picked Muniz, is that Park doesn't have a game that doesn't engage with the grappling. And if you're going to engage in the grappling with Muniz, despite the fact that he is an incredibly flawed grappler who loves that backpack armbar where he takes the back control and goes for the armbar, and there's no ground and pound to him, there's no threat of a rear naked choke from him. He doesn't do the things that like you just should do in a nutshell. And at the end of the day, what happened is what happened. And that was, by that I mean, he got beat. Because, you know, he was going to engage in Munoz's grappling, and Munoz is a really, really good grappler. Munoz is a horribly flawed fighter, and like I'm never going to comfortably pick him against anybody, but like if your game is grappling and you don't really have a way to not grapple with him, probably going to win. Or you have to be a big hitter, like Paul Craig at middleweight kind of is, where you just knock him out because he's a bad striker. He's got amazingly poor hands. Anyways, next fights, Muniz versus Caio Bahaio, a guy who I'm not really into testing Muniz, so it's a test of Bahaio where it's like, all right, Caio, you've got, in this case, the hands to throw against Muniz. And you're primarily a grappler, so like this is kind of like the honey trap. It's like, all right, here is a guy you should not grapple with, and you probably have a really easy path to victory as a striker. What do you do? And if you do grapple with him, do you have success? So that's an interesting question mark fight that I think works nicely. Jung Young Park versus Andre Petroski is my other pick. They're kind of just in the same boat where I think they are flawed fighters that are never going to get to the top, but I do enjoy watching them fight, so why not? And they're good enough that they feel UFC caliber, and they put on good fights. Kenan Song versus Kevin Jousset was not especially interesting after the first 3 minutes. Jousset was able to pick him off, work the jab at range, and make him come in and try and clinch with make Song come in and try and clinch with a judo guy. Now, admittedly, there are some flaws in Jousset's game that I think actually probably need to be addressed after this in terms of the clinch fighting, because Song did have a lot of success with like elbows and stuff and like doing his thing. But otherwise, this was like a really, really good performance by Jousset. He looked more fluid and confident at range, because I've always thought he looked really, very stiff in prior striking exchanges. Like very technically competent, but like not that comfortable, not that fluid, not that second nature movement yet, which makes sense. He's a judoka learning to strike from admittedly one of the best striking coaching teams in the world. And it's coming together. I think I said it when I picked Song in this fight. I picked, I said this could very, very easily be like Kevin Jousset coming out and being much improved. And he was. Looked very, very good. I look forward to seeing him, get rid of some of those holes in his clinch striking, because he was doing it by the third round where he started utilizing the uppercut a lot more and kind of finding like more odd angles to apply his 6'2" massive frame to hitting Song very, very hard coming in and also in the clinch. So he did a very good job there. And I've got Jousset versus Johnny Parsons, the Sluggernaut. It's not that I think Parsons is necessarily even really a step up. It's just that Parsons is at least a very aggressive striker. And that's kind of my question. Is like, Kenan Song, who is a pretty passive striker, pretty low output, pretty sit at kicking range in exchange with you, was able to at times kind of just bash into the clinch. Kind of doing the, you want to leg kick me? Okay, well, F that, because here we go. And Parsons is going to kind of do that from like the outset with a lot of power, a lot of physicality, and messiness. So it's kind of like that. It's the lowest level of meaningful challenge to the style that I still worry about Jousset being able to handle, which is someone who makes things messy and chaotic. Can he handle that? And for Song, I've got Munir Lazez because I don't really have anything else to do with Song. Like, he doesn't really make a good test for prospects because he fights kind of counter the meta. He's like, it's a little bit too slow. It doesn't really replicate anybody else. He's not huge, so you don't get a size test. Like, he's a big guy, but he's not huge for the division. And he's not a particularly great grappling threat. Like, he's not particularly well rounded. So he's just kind of in fun, striking action fights at this point. And Munir Lazez is kind of in that same mold. So yeah, put them out there and see what happens. Hyung Sung Park versus Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross did make it to the second round, so congratulations. There was a good moment in the second or first round where Park ended up in a bad spot with Ross on the ground. But then Park did, take control, had that kind of back mount, rear naked, back mount 50-50 kind of position where you switch from the back to the mount, back to the mount, back to the mount. The only disappointment I had was Park was going very, very hard for the rear naked choke when he should have probably just pounded him up. Probably could have finished Ross right there and then. But yeah, for most of the round, he got dominated. I even gave it a 10-8 Park. He dropped him twice, I think. Either that or he dropped him once and significantly hurt him another time. And the problem with Ross is that he does not have a good chin and he does not have good reactions. So he gets hit by stuff that he should not get hit with. And it doesn't require much because I think it was in the second round where Park just knocks him down with a little jab. Down he went. And then in the second round, eventually it was Park, putting him to the body and then dropping him down with a flurry and a couple body shots and pounding him out. And yeah, I'm not interested in seeing Shannon Ross fight again. If he wants to fight on the Australian regional scene, that's fine. That's whatever. There are worse people flying their trade out there. But this is a guy who should never have made it to the UFC. There are just hard stop physical limitations to him. And his style that doesn't even really meet what he wants. Or what he can do, I should say. Because, dude wants to be he wants to be like Kevin Jousset, but without the frame for it. Or he wants to be like Israel Adesanya, or maybe like Alex Volkanovski. I don't know. But all of these people that have physical attributes that you don't have. Please retire. Please, for your own health, please retire. Because this is 4 KO, TKO stoppages in a row. There should be, it should be a legal thing at this point. Park I've got against Jesus Aguilar. I'm still not convinced on him, but I'm not convinced on him. It's one of those things where the wins he's had, the performances he's had have not won me over, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of hard concern thing that I am seriously worried about. There's a fairly well-rounded game. There's some good scrambling. There's some power. There's some decent striking that builds into combinations and so on. There's nothing that I find hard limited about him. It's just there's nothing I'm stunned by at the same time. Steve Garcia kind of got just controlled and hugged for a round by Melky Costa, which was weird because Costa's, not a grappler, but generally is kind of action built and whatever. And there were various points where he was Matt returning Garcia and he was getting back up in the first round. I'm just can you just stop trying to do this? It's not really working. You're winning, but is your plan to do this for 15 minutes? Because that's what it's going to take. And then in the second round, they get a little bit wild. They get a little bit exchange happy. And Garcia, hurts Costa, puts him on the ground. Costa's bleeding. Garcia gets the back mount, looks for the rear naked choke, and then just, settles to elbow Costa's brain into, the canvas. And the referee comes in to stop the fight. I don't want to say it was a good performance by Steve Garcia, but it is a Steve Garcia performance. He is a big guy who seems to thrive in some chaotic exchanges and so on. has some power that goes along with being a big ass, featherweight. And Costa wasn't able to do what I was hoping he would do. There you go. Sums up the fight. Garcia called out Nate Landwehr. Why not? Like, it is the type of fight that Nate Landwehr probably would love. And Costa, I unfortunately think, as much as I think that there is more to him, I think he's in this position now of Dana White Contender Series graduate, welcome to this team. Because it's like, he's now lost to Steve Garcia. And I think his only win, if I'm not mistaken, was against Austin Lingo, I think Moises was the short nose fight. So he beat Austin Lingo. I like Austin Lingo, but like, that's not amazing. And yeah, he's kind of at that level where, as much as I really want to see more for Costa, it's kind of like, all right, here's a guy who won on Contender Series. We got a lot of questions about him. He's got either some athletic ability or just like a really, really short whatever. All right, here's Costa. He'll kind of test you kind of regardless of what it is. And yeah, that was about it. We moved to Stephanie Egger, Luana Santos. I have nothing to say about this fight other than it was bad. I really don't. It was a lot of clinching, a lot of the ugliest striking you have ever seen. I scored rounds 1 and 2 for Santos. I gave Egger the third round. There was controversy over the decision of this fight, which I guess I kind of agree with, because Judge Tony Weeks somehow gave Santos the third round, but gave Egger the second round. And Judge Jacob Montalvo gave all 3 rounds to Santos. I guess I'm like way happier with like Montalvo's interpretation, because like with Tony Weeks, it's like, how do you give round 2 to Egger and not round 3? It's like one of those things where like, okay, round 2, Santos outlanded Egger significant strikes wise, slightly under. She had a takedown. She had some top control. Whereas in the third round, Santos got heartily outlanded, could not get a takedown. I guess got a takedown, but didn't really do much, but got taken down herself. And like, how? Like, I guess in a nutshell, round 3 is just the better Egger round. Like that is the best Egger round, no matter how you look at it. Santos missed weight at 139 somehow. She's going up a weight class and misses weight by 4 pounds. There's weird stuff going on here. She needs to sort that out. Whatever. I have zero interest going forward. I'm not saying cut them. It's women's 135. It's a very shallow division to begin with. It doesn't have a lot of bodies. It doesn't have a lot of talent. So you keep them, you do something, but I don't have any matchmaking for them, because they're just, I don't want to see it. I came into this fight not wanting to see it, and I came out of it with even less interest in seeing it. Tatsuro Taira versus Carlos Hernandez. Taira had a very dominant first round. Scramble, body locks, so on. Looking for submissions, looking to do his thing. Some sporadic GMP, but like, he did show a little bit more ground and pound than we've seen in the past, which I do like. It's an adaptation that is probably advancing him forward into becoming a much more comfortable ground worker who can punish people for the positions and not just look for like rear naked chokes and stuff. And then in the second round, he clocked him with I think it was a right straight, put him down and pounded him up. Taira called out Muhammad Mokaev afterwards. I just kind of doubt it. Those two seem like the 2 big prospects at 125. The UFC traditionally, when they only have 2 big prospects, does not match them up. I've got Taira versus Alan Nascimento. I've got Carlos Hernandez in the same role that I talked about from Malky Costa. He is a perfectly serviceable fighter. He can scramble. He can do some things, but he's not a spectacular athlete. He doesn't have a spectacularly good skill set anywhere. He is the perfect welcome to the UFC, to Dana White graduates, who's like, all right, you're an athletic guy. Now let's see what you can do when I throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at you, to see what you actually can handle in terms of chaos and so on. And the night opened up with Hayani Dos Santos, now Hayani Amanda. I think it's Hayani Amanda Dos Santos, whatever. They're going with Hayani Amanda. I'm going to say that. Versus Talita Alencar. First round was Amanda winning the fight. It was the better striking. She, more or less was forcing Alencar to miss. Landing her, I think they gave a shot of 22-12 at one point. Let's have a look-see here. Yeah. Outlanded her 34-11 in significant strikes, 34-13 in overall strikes, fended off 3 takedowns. There was 24 seconds of control time for Alencar. It was a perfectly one-sided round for Hayani Amanda, showing off her deeper skill set in terms of the B game, because they're both BJJ fighters. And then in the second round, Alencar got a takedown, had like 2 minutes of top control, did some good work, finished the round really, really strong, actually, landing some nice ground and pound, some things. I like that, because something that was a big concern coming in was Alencar's lack of ability to actually punish people with top control. Like, she would get top control, but there were like no threat of ground and pound. There wouldn't really be. It would just be a control game. So it was good to see her actually get aggressive, stand up in the guard, throw some strikes down, do some things, risk some heel kicks, do her thing, and get it and do well. It was a good second round for Alencar. And then the third round was pretty bad because, realistically speaking, Hayani Amanda should have won it. She landed the better strikes. She landed more of them. Alencar was unable to get a takedown, went 0 for 5 in the round. But the frustration was, of course, that like there wasn't really a huge gap in, like, there was a 4-strike gap in terms of strikes landed. Like, Hayani Amanda was not very active. Like, it would come in, she would land her like 1 or 2 strikes, but she was getting hit with 1 or 2 strikes by Alencar. Yeah, they were way less clean, way less fluid, way less form fitting. And again, Hayani Amanda should have won this fight. But it was the exact type of fight that you don't want to have in the third round. It was where you have a dominant element here where like anyone watching can tell you are the better striker. But you're not stamping it. You're not making it irrefutable, undeniable. And we do know that judges can still be suckered into like, falling in love with someone who's just like moving forward and being aggressive. And that was Alencar. And it worked against Judge Ron McCarthy. And it worked against Judge Adelaide Bird. By the way, Adelaide Bird, Sal D'Amato, Ron McCarthy. The judging triumvirate of doom. Media scores were all for Hayani Amanda, except for Steve Duncan over at MMA Uno, who scored it for Alencar. I'm not familiar with Steve Duncan's work. But yeah, everybody else, Ryan Frederick, MMA Junkie, MMA Mania, Combat Press, Dane Fox, Bloody Elbow, Jay Petrie, Brian Knapp, Tyler Treese, the last 3 all from Jerdog, all scored it for Hayani Amanda. And that is how it should have gone. But I can't I can't feel super bad for Hayani Amanda is what I'm getting at, because I saw this kind of coming. Both girls going forward have the same problem. They are atom weights. They are predominantly grappling atom weights as well, which means that the size is going to impact them even more than, say, like a kickboxer. I've got Alencar against Josephine Knudsen, and I've got Hayani Amanda versus Melissa Martinez. Those are semi-interesting fights going forward, and I'll be excited for them. But again, UFC atomweight division, do it. You already have like 20. You have like at least 12 fighters on contract. There's at least a dozen atomweights in the strawweight division. Anyways, those are the fights. We got a UFC pay-per-view coming up, UFC 296, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Right now, and maybe this will change by the time I do the preview, I'm very on the card. It's not any one fight, but like there's no one fight that has me like super excited. Don't get me wrong. Pantoja Royval will be a treat to watch. But analytically speaking, in terms of breaking it down, it's not. Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington just has question mark, because Colby Covington hasn't fought in a while. He also should not be getting this title shot. That's a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I'm not interested in Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. I'm not really interested in the sacrifice of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson for the hype train of Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm not really interested in Vincente Luque versus Ian Gary, because I still think that Vincente Luque probably should just have medically retired from the sport when you like almost die. Just saying. The undercard is better. I think Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell will be some fun time. Cody Garbrandt, Brian Kelleher, fun time. Ariane Lipsky versus Casey O'Neill, interesting enough. Alonzo Menifield versus Dustin Jacoby, I mentioned it earlier. That's a fun fight. That's interesting. I like it. Andre Touchy-Feely versus Lucas Almeida. That'll be a banger. But I don't know. There's just not the main card, the pay-per-view section of the card just does not have a fight that hooks me. And I realize I may be in the minority of that because, of course, there's a big Colby Covington fan base. There's a big Leon Edwards fan base. There's a big hype train for Shavkat Rachmanov. Stephen One Boy Thompson's a big star. Patty Pimblett has a following. Ian Gary is like a incredibly polarizing figure that probably everybody really, really wants to see because either they want to see him win, as Vincenti Luque, or they want to say Luque beat his butt. But I'm having a hard time getting really into any of the 5 main card fights. That's the problem. Check out the links down below. It should be down below most places, but wherever it is, depending on where you're watching, for the links to the Discord, to my social medias, to my video game stuff. If you want more of me, check it out. Love to have your support. And that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed this decompressing of the fights, and we'll see you in a couple of days to break down UFC 296, which, I'll do my best to hype up.